So it's my pleasure to introduce Rohan Roberts, who is the innovation leader at GEMS Education. GEMS is the world's largest private education provider. I cannot emphasize this. It's a very big institution where Rohan is responsible for promoting innovation strategy planning and entrepreneurship across over 40 institutions of learning in the UAE and the rest of the MENA region. He's also director of the Dubai Science Festival. He's a serial entrepreneur and co-founder of several global organizations, including Intelligent Optimism, Café Scientifique Dubai, and Academy. I happen to know he's also passionate about the Burning Man Festival, a space I believe he views as an incubator for exchange and learning. His work engages radical new technologies, future pedagogies and learning tools, and I believe our conception of the cosmos at large. Please welcome Rohan Roberts.
We live in a world of exponential technologies, disruptive innovations, and accelerating change. Ray Kurzweil, who's the director of engineering at Google and described by Bill Gates as the best predictor of future technologies, says that in the next 100 years, we will see the equivalent of 20,000 years worth of progress. Now, most people, when you speak to them about the future, contemplate the future with a sense of anxiety, trepidation, and dread. And that's because most people formulate their ideas about the future based on what they watch in Hollywood films. And every single Hollywood film set in the future is dystopian. So as an antidote to the doom and gloom of Hollywood, I usually like to start my talks with a short video by Jason Silver. Now, some of you may be aware of Jason. He is the host of Nat Geo's Brain Games, which is the highest rated show in the history of National Geographic. But he's also the creator of a YouTube channel called Shots of Awe, in which he takes ideas from science and poetry, philosophy and literature, art and future studies, and combines them into these aesthetically stunning, visually beautiful 3-minute videos. And he's been described as a wonder junkie, an ideas DJ, a remixer of awe, and so much more. He's a dear friend, and the reason I like to speak to him and hang out with him is because he is a techno-optimist. Let's watch this video. It's called The Future of Us.
So let's talk about the future of us. What does that even mean? The future of us. It's a look at what comes next. It's a look at what might be. Because today, exponentially emerging technologies are transforming what's possible. They're helping us overcome, transcend even biological limitations. The very rules of what it is to be human are up for grabs. We're rewriting the software of life with biotechnology. We're turning matter into a programmable medium with nanotechnology. We're creating sentient minds with artificial intelligence that are not bound by the limitations of biology. These three overlapping revolutions, GNR, genetics, nanotechnology, and robotics, together will be leveraged to lead us towards a black hole-like, impossible to fathom singularity. It's like staring into the sun, a moment of a rousing symphonic climax when all of mind, leveraged and networked together, transcends its biological origins, and we become something more. People worry about the AIs and the them. Well, as Kurzweil says, that's going to be us. The future of us is ours to dream up.
So of all the technologies that Jason mentions, AI, artificial intelligence, will have the biggest impact on humanity. Peter Diamandis says AI will have a bigger impact on humanity than electricity and fire. Thomas Friedman is the Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist who famously said, whatever can be outsourced will be outsourced. Whatever can be automated will be automated. And to this, Kevin Kelly, who's the founder of Wired magazine, adds, whatever can be imbued with AI will be imbued with AI. We're now in the midst of what's being described as the cognifying revolution. Everything that was formerly electrified will now be cognified. That means everything that has electricity will soon have some form of artificial intelligence. And what's ushering in this cognifying revolution? Better data, cheaper computation, and deeper algorithms. Now, when we speak of AI, it's important to distinguish between narrow, general, and super. Narrow AI is the kind of AI we have right now. It can do just one thing: direct air traffic control, play chess, find words on Google, translate a language. General AI, which we don't have yet, but is is something we will develop very soon, is narrow AI is the same as narrow AI, but it can do many things. It can play chess and have a conversation with you on your phone, and direct air traffic control, and detect cancer, and so on. Finally, super AI is, again, it's not on the scene, and it's perhaps a few decades away, but it's AI that is trillions of times more intelligent than humans. Now, when we speak about AI, you hear the techies and the futurists talk about it from a very different perspective. As an educator, and someone with an educational background, I'd like to connect that with the theory of multiple intelligences, which is something that most educators are very aware of, but is not common knowledge in the public space. So before we come to multiple intelligences, it's important for us to have a working understanding of what we mean by intelligence. So when I use the word intelligence, I use it to mean the following. Intelligence is the ability to create products of value in society, find solutions to problems, and identify policies to achieve goals. So keeping this working definition, what I will share with you now is a taxonomy of the different types of AI based on Howard Gardner's theory of multiple intelligences. Howard Gardner is a cognitive scientist at Harvard who famously came up with the theory of multiple intelligences, which says that there are many ways of being intelligent. So in other words, the ability to play music and make art, play sports, to sing and dance, to empathize and sympathize, to emote and role play, to reflect and introspect. These are all different ways of being intelligent. In other words, these are forms of intelligences. So let's keep this thought in mind and look at the different types of intelligences and connect that with AI. So this is my original contribution to the marketplace of ideas. I've scoured the internet. I haven't found anyone who's made the connection between AI and multiple intelligences. So here we go. The first type of intelligence is verbal-linguistic intelligence. These are people who are word smart. They're excellent at using language. They're the poets, the writers, the public speakers. And we already have an example of an AI that is exhibiting this type of intelligence. IBM Watson beat the best human contestants at the game of Jeopardy! Now, those of you who are familiar with Jeopardy! Know that in this game, you're given the answer and you're meant to ask the question. And so IBM Watson actually read all 30 million pages of Wikipedia and destroyed, in fact, the best human contestants at Jeopardy! And this was just one of the answers, or rather questions, that IBM Watson came up with. The contestants were given this answer: a long, tiresome speech delivered by a frothy pie topping. Stumped the humans. IBM came up with the answer: what is a meringue harangue? Now, this is gibberish to most of us, but for those of you who know, a meringue is a kind of pie, and harangue is a kind of scolding or a rant or a rave. It connected these two disparate ideas and won that round. And this is just one example. So I'm going to play a 30-second clip of IBM Watson in action. And I'd like you to observe the reaction of its creators, the sense of joy and pride on their faces, and then observe the reaction of the contestants who were losing, and observe the look of dejection and despondence on their faces.
Brad.
The double Jeopardy round of the first game, I thought was phenomenal.
Watson went on a tear.
Watson.
Who is Franz Liszt?
You are right.
What is violin?
Good.
Who is the church lady?
Yes. Watson.
What is narcolepsy?
You are right. And with that, you move to $36,681.
The next type of intelligence is musical-rhythmic intelligence. These are people who are music smart. They play music, they sing, they dance, they keep time, they keep rhythm. And we already have Ava, which is an artificial intelligence that composes music and has the same rights as a human, legal rights as a human composer. I'd like to play for you a short composition called Genesis. And keep in mind that this piece was created by a non-human intelligence. So it composes music in the classical and symphonic genre, and this is 3 years old. This technology is growing exponentially, and so just imagine the kind of music that these AI systems will be creating in the near future. I'm going to move on in the interest of time. The next is kinesthetic intelligence. These are people who are good at expressing themselves through body movement. They're the gymnasts, the dancers, the actors, and so on. And here's an example of kinesthetic intelligence in action. Think of the trillions of calculations happening in the artificial mind of this robot called Atlas. And he raises his hand in victory. Awesome, let's move on. Then we have Visuospatial Intelligence, picture smart. These are people who are good at representing the external world, processing it through their brain and representing it through art and sculpture. We have Google's DeepMind creating works of art, phantasmagorical pagodas, psychedelic animals, and surrealistic art, reminiscent of some of the surrealists in previous ages. And you have Prisma, which is a Russian app. You input any image and it converts it to any artistic style of your choice: Impressionist, Expressionist, Chagall, Van Gogh, and so on. Sotheby's recently had an auction in which they featured an art piece created by an AI. It was called Memories of Passers-by 1. And essentially, it was a stream of images, portraits of people who've never existed. And it just generates a continuous stream of faces that were not curated by anyone. These were not images, or this was not a rendered video. And the art piece was sold in Sotheby's for £32,000. And if that surprises you, on October 25th, 2018, an AI art that was titled The Portrait of Edmund Bellamy was sold for $432,500. So we're already in the age of AI-generated art, and people are willing to pay good money for it. Still on the subject of art, because this is an art event after all, the next Rembrandt is an example of how AI technology and big data are coming together to touch the human soul in the same way that Rembrandt's did it with art and with his paintbrushes and his canvases. And so essentially what the creators of this art piece did was they analyzed all of Rembrandt's paintings and identified that the ideal subject would be a Caucasian male between the age of 30 to 40 with facial hair looking slightly towards the right with a hat and a collar. And then the AI system analyzed all the eyes painted by Rembrandt, all the noses and ears, and then finally put all these disparate pieces together and created a new portrait that could have been done by Rembrandt, and it's called The Next Rembrandt. And it's fueling the conversation between art and algorithm, design and data, and most importantly, technology and emotion. So we're going to move forward. In the interest of time, I wanted to speak to you about handwriting because teachers are obsessed with handwriting. But interpersonal intelligence, people smart. These are people who have conversations with others, have good interpersonal relationships. And you already see examples of this with Siri and Cortana, people having extended conversations with their smart agents. Mathematical intelligence, this is one of the older intelligences. The first calculators exhibited this, but IBM's Deep Blue, when it beat Garry Kasparov, exhibited mathematical intelligence. Let's move on. So now focusing on the three broad intelligences for which we don't have AI, and which ironically schools focus on the least. First is intrapersonal intelligence, or self-smart. These are people who don't need your life coaches and motivational coaches. They know what's good for them. They self-reflect. They think about thinking. They indulge in what we call metacognition to a greater degree than others. At the moment, we have no AI system that can indulge in metacognition. Pedagogical intelligence is a discrete type of intelligence. Teaching smart is the ability to transfer knowledge and understanding from one brain to another brain. And for that, we still don't have any AI system. And perhaps most importantly, the third is existential intelligence or cosmic smart. These are people who can see the big picture and ask the big questions. Who are we? Where do we come from? What is our purpose? Why are we here? Where was I before I was born? What is reality? What is consciousness? Do we have free will? These are the big, profound questions for which no AI system comes even close to answering or helping us with. So this leads us to a new type of education that people like Thomas Lombardo describe as wisdom-based education, and a whole new field of study called humanics that focuses on technical ability, our relationships with machines, data discipline, how we analyze data, and finally human literacy, how humans can still do things that machines can't. Creating a robot-proof curriculum would mean including something like existential studies, which doesn't exist anywhere in the world right now, but I'm willing to wager a bet that we're going to see more and more emphasis on existential studies the more we see automation and outsourcing and ubiquitous AI. And these are some of the broad areas existential studies could cover and much more. And of all the edtech platforms out there, Academy is, as far as I know, the only one that focuses on existential studies in a real profound and meaningful way. And so I'd like to conclude by emphasizing that it's not going to be a Terminator scenario. The machines are not going to come and destroy us. It's not going to be a case of us versus them. We're going to be them. We're going to merge with the machines. And in many ways, we already are merging with our machines. We're outsourcing our cognition to our devices. The smartphone in your pocket is now like an external brain. It's like an external cortex. If I asked you the phone number of your friend, you haven't stored it in your brain, you've stored it in your external cortex, in your phone. And another piece of optimistic news, when Garry Kasparov lost to IBM Watson, people were despondent. They thought that was the end of human chess. But in the last 20 years, we've seen the number of chess grandmasters double. And today, the best chess grandmaster isn't a human chess player, it isn't a machine chess player, it's a human-machine hybrid, and it's called centaur chess. It's humans and machines playing against other humans and machines. So the upshot is, or the conclusion is, that humans will merge with our technologies and create even more amazing art and amazing music and amazing technologies. So I'm going to come to the broad question now. What is the purpose of education? In a world of ubiquitous AI, where you have AI systems creating art, making music, driving cars, and doing all the things we once thought were uniquely human, what then is the purpose of education? If you speak to educators, principals of schools, they will tell you the purpose of education is to get students, or to help students pass their exams or get into universities. Well, those are sound, pragmatic, practical responses, and I'm not going to argue with that, but I would like to add to it and say there are other purposes, or the other purposes that we ought to have for education. One is to bring a sense of awe and wonder into the education system and foster that sense of awe and wonder. Kids naturally feel a sense of awe and wonder. We systematically beat them out of it metaphorically through the school system. And just stop for a minute and think about the technological level at which this world operates. We're now bathed in Wi-Fi, we have GPS satellites in space, we have rovers on the surface of Mars, the Voyager 1 spacecraft has left the solar system. This is an extraordinary time to be alive. Let's foster the sense of awe and wonder in the school system. Help kids see the big picture. That's so important for schools and the educational system. Zoom out and realize that there are more stars in the universe than there are grains of sand in all the deserts and beaches of our planets. More stars in the universe than there are grains of sand in all the deserts and beaches of our planet. Our sun, in this metaphor, is just one grain of sand. Think of what's out there, and then pull back and realize how foolish our politicians are when they fight over land and petty, silly things. You know, when you see the big picture, all this seems meaningless. Help kids solve global grand challenges. Kids, most of them, many of them are bored in schools. That's because they know the information they learn in school is not going to be of any use beyond the exam. So from the moment they come into school, what would be awesome is if they were working on solving problems in their community. And finally, the purpose of education should help us transcend as a species. Humanity 2.0 cannot just be a biophysical upgrade. It has to be a moral, ethical upgrade as well. And all that learning should be happening in the school space from a young age. And so I'd like to end, and thank you for your time. I explore more of this in my book. It's available on Amazon and on Kindle. Thank you very much.